So getting on to Module 2, Murat said it was very interesting to read all of the comments that were on the discussion board. There was a lot of overlap, I think you might have seen, but then some very interesting comments that seem very context specific. So I wanted to just review some of the comments that I found to be interesting on some of the questions that were posed. So for question 1, what were the course expectations? Nargis said selecting appropriate behavior change approaches and technologies from the sustainability aspect in particular, establishing or enhancing structures and on school data management systems, institutionalizing hygiene education in school curriculum, and approaches to control measures to reduce transmission and morbidity of wash-related illnesses, such as deworming and other campaigns. And then Carlos said, in a recent meeting in Pakistan, the moderator was talking about the pluses of a multi-sectoral delivery of service in a post-emergency response. The hidden dimension that WASH has in supporting people in their psychosocial capacity in a post-emergency situation is of great value. I think that's a really interesting point, the idea of looking at emergencies and the psychosocial stresses of emergencies and how WASH, water and sanitation, in schools might mitigate some of those issues. For some of the key gaps, Paula said the lack of standards and techniques for water and sanitation in schools adopted by the government, and a need to create a program of water and sanitation in schools that can be adopted by the government. Koniam, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, said, let's add that there's a lack of national standards and sub-sectoral policy in order to guide all WASH in schools projects in the same direction. This is a real handicap of the MOE to lead and better advocate for health promotion in schools. I think that's important, both of these points talking about how there may be information out there, but the ability to get the information to the hands of the government in a very understandable and clear way is a big gap in the sector. I agree. We talked about the question about what is useful data, and a lot of people talked about the need for national level data. Here, Jesus said, harmonize data on WASH in schools impact as what is presented in the call to action. Cost analysis, how much can we save in health education with WASH in schools improvements? And the status of WASH in schools situation at the country level. And Justine said, good, detailed, and disaggregated data sets on SWASH to be able to communicate simply and effectively with decision and policymakers. I think these represent some important points about data. We need data that talks about impact, we need to understand the cost implications, and then we also need country level and district level data that can help us advocate for improved WASH programming. On the issue of the main impacts that people saw of WASH in schools, there's a lot of overlap. People talked a lot about absenteeism, gender equity. Mustafa said, WASH is a part of human-based rights approach. It's a holistic approach to the development of the young child. The right to educate is not just the educational aspect, but means also the proper and appropriate school environment. The impacts are 1, improvement of school attendance and the quality of learning. 2, better health and well-being of school children. 3, boys and girls will be agents of change in their communities. 4, schools are more attractive with friendly and functional WASH facilities. WASH in schools should be an entry point to increase the community social demand in terms of water and health facilities, and other aspects regarding the local governance and their full involvement in the development of the communities. I thought that was a very thoughtful and full response. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can pronounce this right. Kavan Karai-Nest said, I think it is possible to introduce behavior change and hygiene practices to students, which will produce benefits both on short and long term in health aspects. Eventually, it will have an impact on former generations, parents, and more probably on future generations. So again, this idea of the fusion of behavior change from schools to home, and we'll be talking about that, I think it's session 5. Tia said, the health implications of SWASH in an emergency are critical. In addition to helping get children back to a more normal routine, having a SWASH facility can also mean that girls do not miss out on school because of lack of facilities during a humanitarian crisis. Again, touching on the issue of emergency response and the need to get children back into school and get back to a normal life. So again, I think that the comments were great this week, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts as we move forward in the course. And don't forget that you can not only respond to the questions that I post or that the moderator posts, but you can respond to each other. And the idea is that there's a dialogue between all the participants. So getting on to Module 2, the learning objectives. We have 4 things that we'll cover today. And I'll talk for maybe another 50 minutes and an hour, and then we'll have some time for discussion. I know that last time the time for discussion was cut short because the presentation was so long, so I hope to leave some more time to have some more interchange between us all as we move forward. So the 4 learning objectives. Number 1, to develop a plan of action at the district. Well, participants should be able to develop a plan of action at the district and local level and know the roles and responsibilities of different district and school stakeholders. Number 2, know the steps of developing a Wash in Schools program. Number 3, be familiar with and able to apply the WHO UNICEF minimum standards for Wash in Schools to their country context. And I hope everyone had a chance. This was the assigned reading for this week. I hope everyone had a chance to take a look through the minimum standards document. I think it's a very useful and important guide that has a lot of utility in planning a Wash in Schools program. And then finally, number 4, to be able to construct a problem tree and understand its utility. And if you've looked at the module outline that I posted, you'll see that we have some discussion board questions this week, but we also have an assignment, our first assignment as a team. And you'll want to pay close attention to the problem tree discussion that we had at the end of this session, because you will be asked to put together a problem tree with your teammates, a short problem tree, and post that up to, well, email it to me and I'll post it. And the idea is to get some practice in working on problem trees if you haven't already done a problem tree. And then finally, at the end, we'll discuss more about the case study. We have a month vacation after this module. And in that time, we hope that the teams will get together and discuss what their case study topic will be. And I'll cover that more at the end of the session. So in developing a plan of action, what should be included? You need to include some program objectives. And I think oftentimes program objectives goals and objectives are a little broad. Really understand what the stakeholders are for the program on multiple levels, on the national, district, and local levels. Understand who the lead agencies are and what the roles and responsibilities are. And finally, make sure that there's systems of accountability in place, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Number 3, you need to have targeting criteria both for the district and the school level, and these should be very clear and transparent. I think oftentimes there'll be challenges with different constituencies thinking that one area is being favored over another. So it's important when you're doing a broad program like this that it's very transparent who is getting the benefits and why. Of course, you need a budget. And I think what I want to stress about the budget is that you need to think about both the upfront and also the recurrent costs of the program. And then the final thing in the plan of action would be the monitoring systems, both your own program systems and also the systems that you may put in place with the government. And we won't talk about that too much this time because we have a whole module on monitoring and evaluation. Going through that list, the program goals and objectives. Just to outline, goals are outside of the purview of the program and represent the broader strategy. They represent the context in which you're doing your program. So your goal may be to reduce the incidence of diarrheal diseases among school-age children or increase attendance of marginalized children, specifically girls. And we know that a Wash in Schools program can't do that. It doesn't address all of the issues of diarrheal disease. It doesn't address all of the issues of attendance. However, these are the health and development goals that you want to set as the broad context. And you'll want to make sure that those goals fit within the context of the government or the regulatory bodies that you're working within. Now, the objectives should be specific to your program, and they should be really tailored to what type of Washington Schools program you're conducting, whether you're conducting a broad-based hygiene awareness campaign or a water supply, district-level water supply program, or you're doing a comprehensive water sanitation hygiene in schools, in 10 schools in one specific area. So you want to be very specific with the objectives. And they can be something like increasing access to hand washing and hygiene infrastructure, or improve access to sufficient supply of safe water to schools during the dry season. So you can have a number of objectives, but you want to make sure they're very concise and clear. A very critical component of this is to go through a stakeholder, an exercise where you go through what stakeholders are involved in Washington Schools, to make sure that you are really understanding all the different actors that play a role in the Washington Schools in your context, that you understand their motivation for participation. And I think one of the key ones, for example, teachers. Teachers are often chosen as the stakeholder responsible for a lot of the programs that we do. Yet at the same time, I think oftentimes we don't think about what their motivation is and how to really engage them in a way that is mutually beneficial. So it's not just that they have another task to do, but that they really feel empowered and engaged in the process and in the program. A third component is determining the expected roles. So I think an example here is that government actors sometimes are told what is going on, but are not fully engaged in a meaningful way where they understand what their roles and responsibilities are. And I think that's a critical piece to think about when you're thinking about the stakeholder engagement. And fourth is to establish understood levels of accountability. I think one of the greatest challenges of a Washington Schools program is that there's no accountability or very little accountability between local actors, district stakeholders, and at the national level. And I think this is a very tough component to work on, but something that's it should be a long-term goal of any program, is to build that accountability so that, for example, teachers aren't just accountable for the grades in their school, but whatever the students get, test scores, but that they're accountable for the conditions at the school. And you have your education officers that go and not just look at the classrooms, but go to the latrines and check and make sure that they're clean and they're accessible to students. So building that accountability between parents, students, teachers, parent-teacher associations, district government officers, that is very critical. So right now we're going to go through the different stakeholders generally and talk about some of the roles that they may have. Of course, this is going to be very context-specific. So some things will be appropriate for your country context, some won't, and there will be other things that you will want to think about with regards to specific stakeholders. So, of course, school children are a critical stakeholder, and oftentimes we think about them just as beneficiaries, or teachers think about them as just as beneficiaries, but we like to think of them as active participants. So children's roles, they should comply with procedures for use and care of water, sanitation, and hygiene, observe appropriate hygiene measures, participate in the design and construction process, and play an active role in cleaning and maintenance of facilities, e.g. through school health clubs. I'd like to highlight number 3, participate in the design and construction process. This is often difficult, and I think there's a lot of talk about child-friendly latrine design and placement of facilities and access to disabled children.